Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's a pleasure to see you all here today. I'm delighted to invite you to our first athletics budget town hall. The purpose of today it was actually a follow-up from our fall 25 spring or fall forum, fall budget town hall, and some additional work that we have been doing with the Budget Advisory Committee. So I'm delighted to see, I think I saw Hugh Young Wong in the room. Raise your hand, Hugh Young. There you are. I know I saw him come in. Hugh Young Wong is the chair of the Budget Advisory Committee, and they have assisted us in the preparation that we've gone through for today. When I first arrived in San Jose State back in 23, one of my institutional priorities was to develop a financially sustainable budget model. You might recall back in that time frame, we had a structural deficit. Over the course of the last 3 years, we've resolved our structural deficit across the institution, and we've been digging deeper into other parts of the university, and that's part of what we'll be sharing today. Today is about transparency. There's an opportunity for us to work together and help advise our university leadership and our Budget Advisory Committee as we make institutional decisions around all of our institutional finances. So today, as I mentioned, is this deeper dive into athletics. So let me explain to you a little bit about the run of show. There'll be 3 presenters today. Kathy Kiotis, who I'll introduce here in just a moment, Jeff Konya, our Director of Intercollegiate Athletics, and Giselle Nunez, our our person in charge and Senior AVP for Marketing and Communications. Thank you, Giselle. Senior AVP for Marketing and Communications that are going to go through the 3 various elements of the work that we're presenting today. There will be an opportunity for questions after each presenter for a few questions, and then at the end, we'll open it up for questions around the entire presentation. There is a Padlet, and we will not be answering questions on the Padlet today, but we'll answer verbal questions from the audience as we proceed. So I'm going to start by introducing Kathy Kiotis, who joined us last fall as our Chief Financial Officer and Vice President for Administration and Finance. And it is her leadership, along with some other members of the Budget Advisory Committee and a subject matter expert that we have had, that have really helped us to understand the fiscal picture that we're going to present today, both in the past and how we think about the future. So thank you all for joining. Kathy.
And I'm going to take this off here because I can't talk and be in one physical space at the exact moment. Okay, so we're here today to talk about athletics, and let's see how this works. Yay. Okay, so budgeting for athletics is really complex. So it's true in the CSU, and it's true across the country. And the reason is because there are lots of different funding sources for all of the things that athletics does. And go back one slide. Okay. Yeah. Mac has it. She's got this going. Okay. I wanted to start actually not on that slide, just on the previous one, because I don't have a slide that lists what I want to talk about, Max. Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, so here we go again, round 2. So what I wanted to say is that budgeting for athletics is super, super complex. And because there's so many funding sources and it's so different from other university departments, that's part of where the confusion and all of the perception on campus that it wasn't necessarily well managed comes from. And so I want to say that it's not just complex here at CSU, it's complex everywhere across the country. And our environment, with costs rising faster than our revenues are coming in, has created additional complexity. The other thing that's happened is since the year 2000, we've had 10 different presidents or interim presidents here at San Jose State, and that has really created an atmosphere of differing priorities. Now, all of those presidents, I'm 100% sure, were focused on our students and student success, but they all have different ways of meeting those objectives. And that just adds to the complexity of this entire situation. So where we have found ourselves is with a structural budget deficit in athletics. And I wanted to set the table first by talking about what a structural budget deficit means, because we say those words, but some people have come to me and said, well, I don't necessarily know exactly what that means. Well, it's pretty simple, really. It means you have less money coming in than all of the things you need to pay for. So just like in your own personal budget, that's a serious problem. So it might mean if you're talking about your own personal situation, maybe you move to a smaller house or a smaller apartment. Maybe you don't go out as often. And so athletics has been faced with that situation as well. And there really are three levers that we can use to address this kind of structural budget deficit. And they're all structural solutions. So we need a combination of raising revenue, we need a combination of reducing expenses, but we also can reallocate resources, and that's part of the solution as well. So here at San Jose State, we really relied on that reallocate resources budget lever. And so, and I'm gonna hop down here in front of it so I can actually see the slides. Okay, so as this slide says, most athletic programs have the exact same situation. Doesn't matter which school, it can be Cincinnati, you know, #1 in the country, but I bet you behind the scenes they have had a structural budget deficit. So they can't rely solely on their ticket sales, their game guarantee revenue, sponsorships, and their general fund. There just isn't enough money to go around. And this strain, the strain that comes from that structural budget deficit is made worse because we also have a structural budget deficit at the state level. And so at the state level, we're getting less revenue. And that means that we can't allocate as much general fund revenue to athletics as we might choose to in a different situation. So we also have mandatory student fees that help us fund athletics, and we have for many years. So the institutional, or the IRA fee, is an essential component for funding athletics here at San Jose State. And that fee was part of our SSETF fee, was established in 2012. And in 2014, we came back and we said, wait, that's an expensive fee. Maybe we want it to be a little less expensive. So we reduced that fee, and that reduction caused less revenue over the last 12 years since that happened. $87 million less revenue. That's a huge, huge reduction. This year alone, that would have been $9 million in revenue. Okay, so our prior year's strategy, as we talked about, really relied on that budget lever around reallocating resources. And so that's a legit strategy, right? It's one of the three levers you can pull to address a structural budget deficit. So there was nothing wrong that happened. But here at San Jose State, we really relied on that lever primarily. And we weren't necessarily transparent about it, which is very, very different than we're addressing things now. So our current strategy is different. What we've done is we've done a detailed review of athletics, as our president said, and we've dug in and we've identified where those structural places are that we can fix this. So that's the first strategy, is correcting that underlying structural problem. This is a structural problem. It needs a structural solution. The second thing is we're creating defined, transparent funding sources so that all of us know exactly how athletics is being funded. And the third thing is we're creating accountability with a cadence of regular information. Every fall, you'll see the athletics budget. Every June, you'll see how they did. So this is our long-term plan. We're going to reduce expenses, we're going to increase revenue, and we also have to do some reallocating of resources, but we're being transparent about it. So in this situation, when I started, I came into the university and there was a $14.3 million cumulative structural deficit in athletics. So I want that to sink in for a minute. $14.3 million. And so how we've addressed that over the course of this year, the first thing that we did is we have some funds that are left over from the pandemic. They were from the Chancellor's office, and they were specifically allocated to athletics to address all of the revenue that didn't come in during the pandemic, as we all know. So that was about $4.2 million. So $14.3 million. Then we used that $4.2 million that we talk about, the special loan fund. And then we're also going to allocate about $9.6 million of revenue from the Mountain West Conference. And that's a fee that was paid by all the universities that are leaving the conference and going to the Pac-12, and we expect that revenue to come in June. So that'll help us reduce the deficit further. But we're still left with about a $500,000 deficit, and we have an ongoing deficit in this year's athletics budget of about $4.9 million is what we're projecting at this time. So we'll be paying that back over about a 10-year period. It's a strategy that has been approved by the Chancellor's office, so we know it's been reviewed and it's been vetted. Okay, so the rest of our long-term plan is oversight. We're going to make sure that we have quality oversight and that we're being transparent about the full situation all the time. Like, that's really important to me. So first, every single month, the president and Jeff Konya, our athletic director, and I sit down and we go through the budget to actuals for that month so we can actually see how athletics is doing. For example, this year we started out thinking we were going to be in a position of about a $3 million deficit. Instead, gate revenue didn't come in as well as we thought it would. So our deficit is going to be higher than expected. It'll be that 4.9 is what we're thinking now. The second pillar of this transparency plan is that we'll have oversight from the BAC and the athletics board. They both have a regular meeting cadence, and they're both charged with making sure that they're providing oversight to the athletics program. And finally, we have oversight from all of you. So just like we're having this town hall, we're going to continue to provide information so that everyone knows what's happening. We'll have annual budget reporting in the fall. We'll have actuals with budget to actual comparisons that we provide after the close of the fiscal year. And then we also can have more town halls. The goal is to make sure that we are being transparent about what's going on. Okay, so that's my part, and I'm talking about the history, and Jeff is going to come up and he will talk about the current year revenue and expenses and give you all more detail. Oh, sorry, questions? It's really quiet in here. Okay, sounds good. Okay, and here's Jeff.
Clicker. Okay. Thank you, Kathy. You didn't get a round of applause. I didn't want you to get one up by the president, you know. So, okay. I'm going to talk about the budget in terms of the reality for this year and moving forward. For those of you who are not in tune with our intercollegiate athletic programs, we put a little slide together called By the Numbers so that you can see or familiarize yourself with what we're trying to attempt to do in intercollegiate athletics. Really simply, we sponsor 22 NCAA sports. We're really proud of our student athletes representing this great university. The 22 sports predominantly play in the Mountain West Conference, which is already referenced. You can see the logo in the bottom right. We have a very blessed history of athletic prowess on this campus, including several Olympians, but we do have 10 team national champions in our history, as well as 50 individual champions, and just last year we had 2 All-Americans in the NCAA as well. And Spartan Athletics, by the numbers, we do have close to 500 student athletes that are participating in these 22 sports, but we also have about 110 students from SJSU that work for the department as either in some form or capacity, and we have about 70 volunteers as well that work with us, and we obviously do support our spirit squads, our band members, by providing a couple of GAs as well. Okay, we're going to look at the revenue at a glance. And so I'm going to talk about the 3 tranches of dollars that comprise our annual athletics budget. The first one is the general fund number of about $17.5 million. The general fund number is money that comes directed from the state as a pass-through and comes into the intercollegiate athletic coffers for the year. This is restricted dollars. The $17.5 million can only be used on salaries and benefits. Okay? The next tranche of money is what Kathy referred to as the SSETF dollars, the ones that were reduced in 2014 from what was passed a couple of years prior to that. At present, that's the configuration of those fees is close to $11 to $12 million. The student fees can only be used and are restricted to student purposes. So items like insurance, medical expenses, travel, equipment, apparel, anything, services, mental health, academic services, tutoring. These are the things that directly impact the student athlete experience, and that is what is called for out of this bucket, student fees paying for expenditures for student athletes becoming the best versions of themselves athletically, academically, and socially. And then we'll refer to as the trust accounts is about $12.45 million revenue at a glance for this upcoming year, what's budgeted. The trust accounts are everything that intercollegiate athletics brings in externally. So these are the conference distributions, the media rights, they're aggregated in the conference distributions. These are the ticket sales that were referenced. These are corporate sponsorship sales. These are the game day revenue. This is in hypothetically concession revenue, parking revenue, all those kind of things get put into these trust accounts. Now, one unusual aspect of our budget, and one that doesn't nearly get talked about enough, is that what can we use these trust accounts for? This is where we can use this for any particular purpose because they're unrestricted dollars of the revenue that comes into the intercollegiate athletic budget. One of our biggest drivers you'll see for expenditures is scholarships for intercollegiate athletic student athletes. That figure this year is a little over $9 million. The university, we pay the university for our student athletes to have the ability to attend class here in terms of those scholarship and financial aid payments from intercollegiate athletics. In essence, and in effect, the $9 million of this 12.45 this year is going to get paid back to the university into the general fund. The net then of the general fund dollars is the 17.5 million. Subtract the amount of money that the university athletic department is paying for the scholarships that's coming from external sources. Any questions on that? I see some discussion. Is that good? Okay, thank you. Over to the right, you see the different, on the spoke of the tire wheel here, you see some of the other breakdowns. But lion's share is the institutional support, the student fees, and then all those around there are the external dollars that come in because of the intercollegiate athletics program to the campus. Here are the expenses. Basically, most of the expenses, over half the expenses, are for personnel, salaries, and benefits. You see the athletic student aid component. It's projected here at 8.7. It's likely going to be a little bit over 9. And then sport teams, those are the operations in terms of how we compete, right? Travel and all the other things that go into the ability to compete and represent San Jose State in intercollegiate athletics. There's the cost of doing administration and certainly some facilities and game operation costs. Now, you see the projected expenses are 45.14, and the projected revenue is 42.65. These are what we were projecting heading into for the athletic budget this year. And if you subtract those figures, that is what we're calling the structural deficit. The revenue that we're projecting coming in is not meeting what we project to be the expenses for the year. Now, here are your top 5 drivers of athletic spending. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to compare these primary 5 athletic drivers with our sister campuses in the CSU, Fresno State and San Diego State, who also are current members of the Mountain West Conference. So a couple things to understand is that we all are playing the same teams per lion's share in conference play. So we will be going to the same kind of places, right, for travel and those kinds of things. We're in the same kind of domain. And then the other thing is, just as a footnote, that these are 2 institutions that are going to be departing the Mountain West next year, as an FYI. Now, in terms of coaches' compensation, and I will direct your attention that, well, before we get there, we do want to make a statement of, apples to apples as best we can. We are sponsoring 22 athletic teams for our budget. San Diego State and Fresno State have 18. So what you may expect to find is when we start revealing some of these expenditures, you may think that we're spending 19 or 20% more in these categories than our fellow CSU institutions because we are sponsoring more sports. Stay tuned for that. Now, in terms of how are we doing competitively, or what is at least that ROI from a competitive standpoint, and this is where I credit our coaches, I credit our student athletes, I credit our staff, because we're performing pretty admirably. If you look at this, you'll see San Diego State over the course of the last 4 to 5 years has a ranking of 113 out of 365 Division I programs. San Jose State is at 120, and Fresno State is at 142. Here's the coach's compensation. This is one of the primary drivers. And you'll notice that San Jose State is a little shy of 11 million. Fresno State's a little north of 11 million. And San Diego State is at 15.2 million. On these slides, we also have put in a generic FBS median slide. And what that represents is the schools that play Division I FBS football in the country, which there's, I believe, about 125 of, or 130 at this point. That's the median in terms of what the coaching compensation number is. The source of all this deck relative to these comparisons are from the Knight Newhouse College Athletics database. So feel free to go out and search, and you can kind of slice and dice these numbers. But it's the Knight Newhouse College Athletics database. In terms of athletic student aid, this is the comparison. We're projecting, again, $9.07 million that we're going to be able to give to the university's general fund paying for the scholarships. Fresno State is at $7.66 million. San Diego State's a little bit north of us at 9.3. The FBS median is about 10.35. Compensation non-coaches. So this is all of our sports staff, admin, training staff, sportsmen, nutrition. We are at 8.94, Fresno 9.15, San Diego State at 13, FBS average at 14. Now, over the course of the last several years, the university has faced some budget cuts due to some state issues and some funding issues coming from that direction. Because athletics is part of the campus community, we were asked to cut our budget as well, similar to almost everybody in the room that works at the university college campus community. And in order to satisfy that request, this is the lion's share of where we took several cuts. Ergo, in 2020, we had 29 MPP positions for our student athletes. That number's been reduced to 26 this year. So we've lost 3 salary lines of MPP positions over the course of 4 years, as well as we've had to pivot a lot of our other positions due to some other issues that have occurred during this time frame. One of the contributing factors has been in our athletic training situation. Athletic training, due to issues that developed on this campus community, required additional support and additional employment in that particular department. We added several positions into our athletic training department in the late teens, in the circa 17, 18, 19 years, without any funding mechanism for them. Over the course of time, we've had to replace several of our other positions that help our student athletes from a service standpoint, especially in terms of our PR and communications, our marketing staffs, as well as in our Beyond Sparta program, where we've had to replace positions to support the athletic training initiative that developed a couple years ago. How this shows up is we have less people working to directly help our student athletes with some of these key areas. I would also like to point out that, these are not absolute dollars. When you factor in, and I don't have to tell anybody in this room, the cost of living index is not the same between San Jose and Fresno State. So these are not similar $8.94 to $9.15 billion comparisons. There's a difference when you take into account the cost of living. Oops. The computer really likes this slide, so are there any questions so far on the 3 slides that we showed? The coaches' compensation, predominantly our head coaches' compensation. While I have some time, I will also state for what? Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. One of the other things I'd like to point out here in terms of our coaches' compensation is that some of you may not know that athletics has about 82% of our coaches are in the Faculty 3 union position. That's because the university has over 100 courses that have sports connections, and over 30 of them are in the course catalog directly attributed to intercollegiate athletics staff. The 4th category for comparison is game day expenses and travel, and this is the most interesting one to me. And I think it speaks to, our attempt to be good stewards of every dollar that we receive to try and maximize and be as efficient as possible. Again, Fresno State and San Diego State in 23-24, which is a reporting year, in Knight Newhouse College Athletics database, we spent $7.33 million on game expenses and travel. Fresno State was $1 billion more, and San Diego State was quite a bit more. Yet I'm making the point we were all in the same conference playing the same teams. And plus, we have 4 extra teams. So we have more coaches, more travel, more teams. So I think that this slide maybe speaks to a little bit of the efficiency that we're trying to operate with. This is a facilities and other expense slide in the 23-24 year. This is a little bit misleading. I will say that the San Diego State bar graph is attributed to them building and launching a new stadium called Snapdragon in that particular year, and I assume that most of the facility expenses are tied to that launch. However, even if you look at our facility and other expenses compared to Fresno State, which has similar facility concerns as we do from a macro standpoint, they're about 2x in terms of their expenditures for facilities and other expenditures. And then this is the slide of the entire Mountain West for this same reporting year. I would illustrate a couple of different things. First of all, this is in 23-24. What we already know is that several of the institutions in the new Mountain West, or the ones that are going to be moving into the Pac-12, are having conversations on fees and funding similar to the ones that are occurring on this college campus community. San Diego State, you see what their budget was in that 23-24. That may be influenced by the opening of Snapdragon. But it also is going to be influenced next year because they have just passed, at least we've been told that the campus community has installed a new athletic fee for their campus community that will expend an additional, or allow them to have an additional $9 million in their budget. You can see others, Colorado State, Boise, Utah State, New Mexico, are in the process of having similar kinds of dialogue on these same kinds of issues. Our friends at Fresno, we've been told, have recently added an athletic fee last year to the tune of about $5 million. And what I would also say to the community is, I know that there is a student fee referendum IRA on the table for intercollegiate athletics. If you add that $5 million, or that proposal, to where we are, we would still be bottom of the Mountain West. I think from our purposes, we just would like to be able to compete and be as efficient as we've already shown in order to attack the challenge of trying to win championships and become the best versions for our student athletes, athletically, academically, and socially. I'll stop there. Yes. I heard your question, but for the purposes of everyone else, would you mind coming and stating at the microphone? That's a great question. I don't believe it's going to have necessarily an impact in the media rights valuations. In fact, there was a report yesterday that said that the media rights valuations for the ongoing Mountain West institutions, that number is going to be the same as we move forward in 26, even with the new configuration of the Mountain West. So we're going to get about the same distribution that we've been getting and we can count on. I think the only issue that we have to account for, and we would have accounted for it no matter what, is with our House settlement. With the House settlement, there's going to be about $400,000 to $500,000 that's going to be withheld as San Jose State's part of the national response to the House settlement. You will have that show up in terms of the distribution amount of the Mountain West being withheld to pay for those obligations. Other than that, with the revenue streams and our other projections, I think we can account for the House settlement payment, and we're going to be pretty much flat in terms of moving forward with what our distribution is going to be from the conference. Good question. Thank you.
I might have two questions, and I hope this doesn't jump forward in the presentation. But one, what's the game plan going forward? So it's like, this is a good transparency exercise. Like, where are we? What we've done, what we've seen. Obviously, there's no, you're not being frivolous. You're kind of at the bottom in all these spaces. As chair of the athletics board, the president just tasked us with working through, like, what's a sustainable athletics budget look like? But in addition to that, like, what game plan to take this and move forward with is now going to shape up?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I guess part of my responsibility on this campus is to be a cheerleader for all the good work that our intercollegiate athletic program is doing, our student athletes, our coaches, and our staff. And I guess in the role of cheerleader, I would, my personal opinion, is support the current IRFE referendum that's on the table and being discussed. But that is a campus community decision, and I have my own opinion on it, and of course I'm going to advocate for that because I know what the value is of intercollegiate athletics for a campus community. And so that if that is or is not a lever, I think that's going to have to play itself out. But the point of the matter is, trying to be transparent, is we don't have enough money to operate for a wide variety of factors. I think it goes back to the decisions that were made back in 2014. And a lot of this has to do with the changing climate in intercollegiate athletics. You know, it's not the same world. You know, now we've had the House settlement, the implications of that, the revenue share environment, the transfer portal, the NIL space. All of these things are kind of conflating the situation, not just here, but across the country. And you're seeing this dialogue occur nationally. So I think from the standpoint is we're going to be as good of stewards of whatever dollars we receive. And we're going to continue to try to do that to the best of our ability. If the structural deficit, you know, continues, it's going to be a university decision with how we're going to have to respond to it. Yeah, I can speak to the success. I appreciate that, Kathy. I do think that, you know, we've had a really good run here last several years. We've set some historic markers, and again, all credit to the student athletes, the coaches, and the staff. We set our Learfield High record. I think we were second in the Mountain West a couple of years ago. That's the number one historic marker, which happened in 23-24 for this entire history of intercollegiate athletics. We've had the All-Americans, you know, we've had team championships. We've had the highest winning percentage we've had in the revenue sports over the course of the last 5 years. So I think we've kind of showed our worth from a competitive standpoint. And then obviously with the value propositions in terms of what athletics can do for a campus community, being visible in terms of the traditions and the place to gather, and the visibility and the brand equity that comes from intercollegiate athletics. I think Giselle's going to go through that. A couple of the media items that came through last year that I think benefited the broader university. So I mean, it depends on which part you'd like to say we've been successful at, but you know, we've done a pretty good job in all the different categories. And again, all full credit goes to my staff and the student athletes and coaches.
One more. Oh.
Hello. So just a couple quick clarifications. So from these slides, it appears that SD pays more essentially for what they're doing, correct?
Yeah, they also raise a lot more, and I think that's so. When you look at to be completely honest with you, San Diego State, Fresno State, and San Jose State, they have the same kind of budgetary building blocks by virtue of being CSU institutions. And the reason why their budgets are significantly higher, especially at San Diego State than Fresno State, is because of the revenue that they can produce externally. If you look at the two levers that are institutional aid, which would be support from the state that comes through, or the student fee equation, all three institutions are fairly comparable heading into 23-24. The issue now is pivoted, though, because our sister institutions have recently passed fees, so there's no question they're going to be operating with several more $1 million heading into next fiscal year than we are, due to the decisions that were made on those campuses within the last 12 months.
So with that, my confusion, I guess, is with SD's significantly higher spending than us, their student fee, the IRA fee that just recently passed, it sounds like, is at least $100 more. I believe from the IRA little blurb, it is specifically $250 annually, this new fee. Ours is $369, with their much higher pay, or what they pay for versus what we pay for. I guess those numbers just aren't lining up for me. And then as well, Fresno State, their student fees are much lower than ours already. So I guess those numbers just aren't lining up for me, and I'm curious why.
Well, with respect to the San Diego State question, Can you restate the question? I had the answer for you.
Essentially, the question is why is their proposed and recently passed IRA fee lower than ours, $250 versus $369, when they are paying more in all of the categories presented?
I'd have to study their IRA fee. My suspicion is that there is, in our IRA fee request, athletics is only 40% of the request, and there's other initiatives that are attached to our IRA fee. With respect to San Diego State, I believe that their fee that they went out to was more dedicated to intercollegiate athletics.
Okay, I'll do more research on that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say this town hall is focused on athletics and the athletics budget. If you have fee questions, those are more appropriately for next Tuesday's fee town hall.
Sure. Anyway, I hope that helps out.
Yeah, hi,
Yes.
Jeff. So I have a question that arises just from osmosing questions that I've been asked at
Sure.
events from attendees, and then also my own personal curiosity. So with respect to our athletes, I think there's a perception that people are flying around the world recruiting all these international students to be our athletes. Like and I've heard from even within my own family, how come there aren't Californians that can play tennis, for example?
Yeah.
And then I've also gone to women's basketball games, which are lightly attended, but I'm surrounded by the families of the local athletes. And so I've heard really in my ear, which I'm the inappropriate person to talk to about this as Dean of Engineering, why don't we recruit more people locally for sports? And so I'd love to have your perception on this and some talking points to help understand how this works. I don't think we're putting people on private jets to recruit all around the world to get
We are
these
not.
athletes, but help me here.
Well, I would say this, and again, this is probably going down a huge rabbit hole, but the entire world, we have coaches in the room, so they can probably attribute what I'm about to say, but I think the world of recruiting has changed quite dramatically over the course of the last, since COVID. One is that the recruiting is a lot more technologically friendly, i.e. Zoom meetings and those kind of things, which require less time to travel. In fact, I believe the new recruiting model is super transactional, and where you had to spend years and years developing relationships, these decisions are being made in much shorter time frames and made with more people at the table to make informed decisions. By that I mean the NCAA has allowed others to serve as advisors to help guide prospects through this space these days. And so there's a lot more interested parties that are part of the equation for recruiting processes. My philosophy is I treat the coaches as CEOs of their program, which means I have certain expectations in terms of performance and metrics and academic standards all the way down the line. So I don't restrict them per se to say, you need to recruit here, you need to recruit here, because we're playing competitively nationally. And if we put some of those impediments, not impediments, but if we put some of those restrictions in place, it could create a situation that would be a competitive disadvantage if there were other more available players that were better athletically talented that could assist our rosters. That said, we have had several conversations within the last several years about trying to be California-based in our recruiting. There's an incentive in our budgets for several of our sports to do that very thing, which is why I think it's showing up in certain sports, because again, we pay for our scholarships. And as everyone knows here, in-state rates are much more favorable than out-of-state rates or international rates. And so to maximize the resources, our athletic teams should be focusing primarily on California, or at least have some quotient with California-based recruiting.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sure.
Do I get to take one? So 2 clarifying questions, and I think this may actually be for Kathy, so I'll see if that's right.
Well, thank you.
So two
Awesome.
so 2 points. First of all, one of the strategies that you mentioned for closing the deficit was this one-time payment from the Mountain West, but one-time payments don't close structural deficits. One-time payments are one time by definition. So what's the plan once that settlement, or once that departure fee is gone? And then I have a second part to the question.
That's a great question. So Dean Kaufman's question is, why would we use one-time funds to close a structural deficit? So there's 2 components here, right? Like, we came into the year with a $14.3 million cumulative deficit from many years, right? And we have to fix that. And then you have the issue of the structural deficit in the ongoing base budget, right? So that we're trying to fix by raising fundraising goals, by cutting expenses, and also by instituting the student fee. So that's a separate budgetary issue. So we have 14.3 that we've got to fix, and we come down, we apply the 4.2 million that we have left over in the special loan fund, and we apply the 9.6 million one-time payment from the Mountain West Conference. And that brings us down to kind of a balance forward that we have to pay off of about $500,000. And then we have the structural deficit that we have to address.
Excuse my simple question here, but
Yeah.
that doesn't sound like a deficit. That sounds like a debt.
Well, it's a little bit of both, right? Like it's a deficit
I mean-
from the past. So you can think of it as a debt. That's fine.
Okay.
And then we have the structural deficit in the current ongoing base budget, meaning we don't have enough revenue coming in to cover the expenses in the program.
And
Is that more clear?
Yeah, that does
Okay.
help. And then a follow-up, in this year's budget report that came out in the fall, the athletics page showed that there was a $14,000 mismatch between revenue and expenses. How did it become 3.2 or whatever that number was that what changed?
So a whole lot of things changed, right? So the revenue that we projected that we were going to have at the beginning of the fiscal year hasn't come in, and that's the largest differentiator.
And so that's the generated revenues? It must be, right? Because
yes.
the state funding and the student fees
Right,
don't change, right?
correct.
Okay, thanks.
It's that other piece on the donut. Let's see if I can go back to that slide. Oh, it won't go back. To the donut slide with the revenue. I think Jeff called it the spoke slide, the wheel. Yeah, so if you think about it, the piece that's changed is that the stuff that's going into the trust accounts aren't coming in the way that we projected. Specifically, it's a combination. So our gate receipts are less, like there's a variety of factors. Okay, did that answer your question? Okay, awesome. Okay, it's Giselle's turn.
Thank you so much. I'm going to come here for a little bit and, oh, thank you. You know what? Mac's going to probably drive the slides here. Okay. I was hoping for Jeff's enthusiastic and warm welcome, but he didn't do that, so darn, Jeff. Kathy. All right, happy Thursday, everybody. Thanks for, let's see if I can do this in about 10 minutes so we can have some more time for questions. So without the first slide yet, just for context, I've been here 11 months as the Chief Marketing Officer for the university, and actually I feel very fortunate to be part of a university that has a robust athletics program, and I'm going to share with you why in just a little bit. So part of this context is that athletics really acts as a strategic marketing and enrollment asset. And it's actually been doing that very cost effectively for a number of years. And it's been the primary outward marketing arm for the university for many, many years. As I have now worked to establish our own marketing strategy, we, for the first time, are starting to have an annual marketing budget, but we've never had that. So athletics has consistently been able to deliver regional and national and global visibility for us without really, probably most of us even thinking about that, but they have been that primary arm for us. So, and now as we face the demographic cliff and our anticipated decrease in international enrollments as well, this visibility and now combined visibility with our university marketing efforts is actually essential, and it's going to be complementary to our overall long-term efforts. So, and I also want to emphasize that our marketing in general always emphasizes our academic programs, and so we leverage athletics to show and to showcase the university as a full experience university, but we always lean on our academics, that campus life, the culture that we want to show holistically to all of our prospective students and families. So our first slide is an example. There's 3 examples here. Yes, 3 examples. So for the past few years, athletics has been, again, the main driver of our marketing. And through those efforts, they've been able to build really great media relationships as well. And so the third example here gives you a sense that, third? Yes, the third, middle example. The column in the middle is how athletics has been able to leverage. Oh, actually, let me backtrack too. This slide gives you an example of all of the marketing efforts that have come directly from athletics. So number one, this has been happening for many years. The middle example shows you the relationship and some of the examples that come from our NBC Sports Bay Area broadcast, of which that little image that you see there is our little Spartan Head logo that shows up on Warrior games, Sharks games, Giants games, 49er games. And that is not, that's not easy to get. And just the fact that our logo is in front of millions of audiences with global, attached to global and international national brands, those aren't, that's actually priceless. And again, coming from other institutions that don't have the ability to have those types of partnerships, that does make a difference. It makes a difference just from a brand equity awareness, brand equity and awareness, and it takes years to build that up. So over time, right, we're reinforcing, and I was talking to Andrew Wright, our senior AVP for enrollment management yesterday, and he also says the same thing on how much he hears from families when they see our logo placed in these key markets on TV and such. Families and parents tell him, yeah, I saw the Spartan logo on X game, right? So it's about consistency. And not only is it important for our prospective families and students, but also our the employers, right? The mindset of the employers that we're trying to attract, that we're trying to have our students go and work for, that's also important to have that type of perception from them, that that we're able to reinforce that our brand is strong and that we have a lot to offer as a full university experience. So the other two examples are our conference and national matchups, and this is I find this really fun because again, I come from other institutions that don't have this ability, but you have our affiliation with the Mountain West that allows us to have ads. I think this was a year ago. Allows us to have ads, 600 ads being played in the course of a few months to a number of audiences for all of our sports. And because we are part of the Mountain West, and because we are also eligible for bowl football, I'm actually learning all of these terms as well. But we're able to be invited to the Texas game. That's an invitational, and that alone, being able to have our ad play at that Texas game, allowed us to have national attention that we normally would never have been able to pay for, because one ad at this Texas game that played on ABC cost $250,000. $250,000 is their overall marketing budget for 1 year. That's the cost of one ad. So the fact that we're able to show up at these in such a national sphere, that's just people remember that. People remember that, and a lot of our, let's just say, competitors locally aren't able to have that type of access. So that's also really important, that we are in markets that other competitors, especially our CSU counterparts, are not able to be in. So we're really helping to differentiate our brand nationally, locally. Also, this is also very helpful to us as we're from a very targeted marketing perspective. We're trying to get into other states and working with through the Western Undergrad Exchange Program, we're targeting students, so whether it's for our undergrad or our online or our graduate programs, we have marketing campaigns happening in these other states that these efforts help us to leverage and complement. So that is also very important to us because it's expensive to go national, and our budget is still relatively small to be able to go national. So this complements those efforts. If we can go to the next slide, this is just an example of an ad that played in the Summer Olympics. I don't know if anybody saw this ad, but we were able to leverage this opportunity to have our ad in the Summer Olympics because of the media relationships that athletics had already established through their marketing efforts. Because it's not easy to have an ad play during the Summer Olympics. So that's just that example, and it gave us a number. I mean, so the ROI was measurable, and so we're highlighting the different ways that we measured that that ad expense, and it was extremely successful, and it even garnered a donation, a contribution. So, an example of how we've leveraged those media relationships. Then the next slide, which one is that? This is now leveraging, because of athletics, we're able to leverage all the SJ26 activities with the city of San Jose. So, and as an example, and if you haven't been to the locker room in downtown, we're even able to have a space there with our sports merchandising. The fact that we're able to have that space, the fact that we're able to do a collaboration of a logo with SJ26 and SJSU that you may see on El Paseo, but you're going to start to see around the city, is also due to our ability to, be able to have all of these athletics programs speak loudly, and actually that also allows us to be a host partner, as many of you know, right? We're a practice site, even though it's the best kept secret. Practice site for NFL, for FIFA, a host partner for the NCAA. All of those things would not be happening, and we wouldn't be able to leverage these visible, high-impact, activities without having athletics having their brand not only be a very strong brand in the market, but also we have a very good athletics program that can also speak for itself and can stand alone. So the next slide is about the Spartan Edge. So to the same conversation around how we're leveraging, there's 2 points that I want to make here. So one is we now have our own marketing campaign. So as a university, we have our Spartan Edge campaign. We're leveraging that. This really just goes to broadening our institutional brand strategy, right? So athletics now continues to do their marketing efforts in different markets, and now we're starting to build our own marketing strategy to emphasize various aspects of our university, and mainly showcase us as a full experience university. And athletics is intentionally included, but it's not the sole message. So it's really a proof point for us of the vibrancy and the opportunity and the relevance that we offer as a full experience university. We're able to leverage all of these activities. So yeah, we would be able to perhaps place these ads as is, but it actually lends us more credibility that we're able to also leverage our athletics programs and our athletes in these commercials, because again, it showcases us as a full experience university, as well as we're leveraging the relationships that have been established already by athletics marketing so that we're able to have placements in these key sporting events. Because again, it's not easy to have placements during the Giants games, during the Winter Olympics. We weren't able to make it to the Super Bowl, the main channel. So so whichever that one that is, I think it's Fox. I can't remember, but we're going to make it to Telemundo. Hey, so watch the Spanish version of the Super Bowl. But that's also our audience. So we're able to leverage those relationships that athletics has already established as well. So I wanted to show you, if you haven't seen our new video, we're going to play that for you next, and this is Get the Spartan Edge.
The Edge isn't a destination. It's who San Jose State University is today. In Silicon Valley, innovation is lived, not just learned. In a community that broadens your horizons. Here, you graduate with more than a degree. You get the Spartan Edge.
So does that showcase a full experience university? Do you think so? Okay, I hope so. We're excited about the campaign. I hope you're excited about the campaign, and I'm excited to continue to work with athletics marketing as well to continue to leverage what we both bring to the table. But really, brand awareness, compounds over time. So repeated exposure makes us more attractive to prospective students and more recognizable to employers. And working together and leveraging our relationships and even our budgets is going to really move us forward to expand our reach and our depth in our marketing. So with that said, I will, and again, our goal is to continue to grow enrollment and continue to build our partnerships with our markets and our employers. So with that said, questions for me, and right after this, we're going to move into open questions for everybody. Okay, so just move to. All right, we're going to go to the panel. So if we can get the slide up, and then call up Jeff and Kathy again for questions for everybody. Because Jeff can't wait to get up here and ask and answer questions again. And we're going to sit right there. And if you have a question, if you can use the mics, please. And the Padlet. Oh, we should have. If maybe in the back, I can ask if we can turn on one of the monitors so we can get the Padlet QR code there, if it's possible. Okay, that's not possible. Never mind. All right, so first question.
Alrighty, so a lot of the first part of this presentation talked about sources of revenue for the athletics budget and redistribution of funds. And I actually do have a fee related question, which I've been told I shouldn't ask. The plan also includes some redistribution from the current funds or the current fees, student fees that athletics takes funds for, which is SSETF. So in the plan presented to the Academic Senate, there's a redistribution of funds of $1.7 million from academic affairs that they're losing from SSETF, which is being gained in athletics, gaining approximately $1.9 million. And the overall projection from all of these changes in fees is an additional roughly $7 million to athletics, or an increase 60% over what they currently get from fees, and about $2 million to academic affairs, so an increase of about 19%, which isn't tiny, but this redistribution of $1.5 million from academic affairs to athletics is something that I'm not seeing talked about, and I don't feel like it's very transparent.
No, that's a great comment. So the reason that funds are, and we'll talk about this more on Tuesday, we'll address the student fee questions, but I want to say that the reason that funds are shifting between SSETF and IRA has to do with what the Ed Code allows to be spent in different buckets. And that hasn't been addressed properly, so that's what we're addressing through that movement. But you're exactly right. The question really comes to the heart of the fact that athletics needs $6.8 million, $5 million from the new IRA, and $1.8 million from the SSETF fee in order to address the structural deficit that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. And that's a really, really important point. And it's really important for transparency, but it's also important so that you understand the history of how we got here, right? So the last 3 fiscal years, athletics has had an average deficit of about $8.8 million. And through budget cutting and addressing those structural issues, raising more revenue than planned through fundraising, using the expense lever and cutting costs, it has been addressed, right? So we're projecting the current year deficit at $4.9 million, and we have a plan to create a structural solution for that structural deficit. That plan's been presented to the Chancellor's office, and they've approved it. So it is sound, and it will correct that situation going forward. But there has been an ongoing issue with budget deficits in athletics, and past administration has addressed that through primarily reallocating resources. So hopefully that answers your question.
Hello, I had two questions for Jeff. Jeff, do we have any NIL money available from the outside? And if so, can you say how much it is?
Boy, yeah, I can tell you that we have about this year, we have about 1.2 million in institutional revenue share. And we have an NIL third party that operates. We don't have direct control over their budget, but anecdotally, I've been told that we have a budget there of about $500,000.
Okay. And then it seems to me that when a number of universities left the Mountain West, that they had an exit fee to pay. Is that true? And will we be receiving a portion of that, or have we already received a portion of that? Thank you.
Yeah, great. And again, I think I'll refer a little bit to what Kathy said in her presentation, but I'll call it out that yes, the departing members, according to the Mountain West bylaws, in order to leave the conference, costs around $20 million per institution. Those dollars, as well as another litigation situation with the Pac-12 and Mountain West at large, has created two financial tranches of dollars that potentially can come to the Mountain West. One is what you've referred to with the 5 institutions leaving at $20 million per. The other situation is a lawsuit that's in the system regarding poaching fees for the Pac-12 against the Mountain West. And so anyway, there are different litigation around the move of the Pac-12 and the Mountain West as the separation moves into fall of 26. But yes, those dollars are part of a grant of rights situation in the Mountain West for the legacy schools that are remaining as part of the Mountain West. That grant of rights agreement calls out certain distributions to each of the legacy institutions, and that is the 9.6 million figure that was represented in Kathy's presentation.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for speaking to everyone here today. If I may, SJSU is an academic institution first, and that should be a priority. How does athletics help students earn jobs in athletics that they have played at SJSU? And what % of athletic students have earned a job related to their field? And how does that compare to non-athletic students? Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll tackle the first question because I think we had the same kind of question, and it gets the hair on my neck a little bit prickly with the reference that athletics is somehow non-academic endeavor at this campus community. I think I said in my presentation that of all of our coaches, we have 82 to 83% that are faculty Union 3 coaches that are teaching classes for this institution. And again, I think over 100 sports-related courses in the catalog, obviously over 30 directly attributed to intercollegiate athletics. So I believe we are an academic endeavor, and I do believe that the campus community should be proud of the efforts of our student athletes in this arena. We had an overall GPA of 3.2 as an entire student athlete population. We've led the Mountain West in terms of academic accolades for, I believe, 3 years running now. So again, full credit to our folks that are working in the SARC, our Student Athlete Resource Center. Full compliment to, I see some of those folks in the stands. Kudos to you all for your good work, as well as our coaches and our student athletes. But yeah, I think we take the academic side of the equation very, very seriously. And we try to be as good collaborative partners as we are with the academic side of the house. With respect to your other question about some particulars about graduations, I don't have that readily off the top of my head in terms of that data that you just asked for, but I would turn that over to our Beyond Sparta program, which is a dedicated kind of life skills shop for our student athletes where they do a lot of their career planning and placement and internships. And I'll have them provide a report back to this group that we can distribute in terms of some of our placement of our graduates in as relation to their participation in intercollegiate athletics, but more particularly their involvement with our robust Beyond Sparta program.
Hello again. So this question is going to be slightly off topic, but I feel like it's important to bring up right now, kind of the elephant in the room, regarding the Title IX decision that came out, I believe, a week ago, and discussion with funding being moved to athletics and large amounts of funding being moved to athletics to support student athletes. I just wanted to raise the question of how will SJSU continue to support student athletes of all kinds, including our trans student athletes, because the Title IX decision has a lot of students in the community quite frightened. I know this isn't the purpose of this forum, however, I feel like it is relevant and extremely important.
Yeah, I think relative to the Title IX situation that's developed over the course of the last couple of weeks, I think, you know, those are in the hands of folks who are looking at how to address those particular issues. And right now, we need to let them do their good work and see what that response would be. But I will say that, particularly to that situation, I'm extremely proud of, you know, our student athletes and our coaches, and our support staff and our security officers, police officers, and the whole campus community that provided those opportunities for participation in that season. There's a lot that went into it, and no matter what your belief structure might be on those particular sets of issues, you know, I think it's a credit that this university persevered through some of that. And it's, again, a credit to those student athletes, coaches, and our staff for making it through a very difficult, polarizing political set of circumstances. That said, as far as the particulars, we are committed, obviously, to Title IX. You know, we went through a situation several years ago where we were, got to the other side of, and I think we're a better campus community by going through that experience. That said, we have full commitment, and we support all of our student athletes in all of their endeavors to the best of our ability. And, you know, that I think is a responsibility that I take very, very seriously, so that we put our student athletes in the best positions so that they can grow from their set of experiences, much like any other student on this particular campus. So that may not answer your question, but that's my off-the-cuff response to that. And then, again, I just want to acknowledge the gratitude to a lot of different people in this college community that worked with Intercollegiate Athletics and collaborated to try and do right by a lot of different individuals.
Thank you.
Okay, I think there's one more. Okay.
Comment and a question. Jeff, Greg, Michael, Brian, Scott, thank you for what you're doing for our 500 student athletes and 100 plus support staff. Personally, as a former student athlete in college, I know I wouldn't be here today without my athletic experience, and I'd have significant debt, so thank you for that. I want to go back to the marketing slide because I just wanted to get a little clarity. You said the Bay Area sports, the NBC sports, about $314,000 in revenue, I think I saw, or value. I was just curious, so is that something where we're spending 400 and we're getting 700 value and that's net? Is that something where the 3.5 million eyes on the logo is translated into that value? Or just curious if you could break that down for me.
Jeff wants to jump in, and then maybe I'll jump in. So
I'm going to state when I looked at those slides, what I thought, and see if it's right. I believe that what was represented was what the university would have to pay for those placement ads, if not for the relationships with Intercollegiate Athletics. I could be wrong.
He's on the right track. Yes. So it's estimated value, but overall, our budget is less than what the estimated value is. But the estimated value is because we're getting additional, because of the long-standing relationship with the media buyers and or NBC Sports Bay Area, they give us more than we actually pay for. as well. And so that's just part of having this long-standing relationship with them. So there's a lot more that goes into it, but that's the essence of how we're measuring above and beyond what we're paying at retail.
Thank you. And then for those 3.5 million viewers or the 4 million you mentioned on Texas.
For Texas.
What mechanisms do we have to say, like, from that 3.5 million or from the 4 million folks, we secured XYZ partnerships or XYZ philanthropic dollars came in because of that?
So there's not a perfect way of doing that, but there's different ways of doing that. We haven't been great at that in the past, but we're moving forward with actually having more ways of measuring that. So as an example, the Summer Olympics ad that we showed, that was intentional in terms of we wanted to measure the ROI, and so we established different ways of doing that, right? Requests for information forms that were filled out, which go directly into our application pool, right? I mean, we even had a donor make a donation because of that ad. So there's different ways that we're now placing like strategically so that we can better measure this. But some of it is, brand awareness in general is hard to measure. There are some standard forms of measurement in marketing, but we're trying to do better when we're doing our brand awareness campaign so that we have some direct, return for investment, that, return on investment measures that we can report back out to the community.
Great. Thank you so much. Go Spartans.
I think there's one more question.
This is also about the 300,000 from NBC Sports. I'm still confused. Like, is NBC paying us that money, or are you estimating, like, because this many people watched it, this is how much they're going to donate? Like, how did you get that number?
Correct. So it's the latter. So, without going into the marketing basics, but essentially you multiply the number of impressions that you're going to be receiving times the cost per ad. So CPM, cost per mille, times number of impressions. And so there's a standard formula of this is the cost for cost per thousand is $25 per 145,000 impressions. And so you basically, so it's a formula that you push into how much you're paying retail, and then you compare it to how many eyes have on those ads based on how many eyes generally have on a Giants game, right? Or a 49ers game or a Sharks game. So there's formulas set up already within that NBC has because of their own. I know this is complicated, so this is not something for us to explain here, and I can talk offline more about this, but there's formulas set up where you can figure out estimated values.
Well, I understand what you're saying about, like, if you spend like X amount on ad and then there's like this many average viewers, but how does that equal value?
That's part of this formula, because the more impressions, so as an example, right, the more impressions, if I just pay $1 for this ad, but now the value is I'm just making this up, 5 million impressions, right? Like 5 million eyes are going to be on this ad. Paying $1 is a steal for that. So I'm not paying what it would normally cost me, right? Which is, again, I'm making this up, $100,000 to get all those eyes on that ad. So I'm not paying the full retail price, essentially. I'm paying less. Yeah. And I'm getting more for my $1. So it's like, so does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I understand that, but like, you're still not getting actual money out of it, are you?
No, so there's no, so you don't get money out of it.
That's the part I was confused, because it said value on the slide, so I assumed that meant we were actually getting $100,000?
No.
Okay.
I wish, but no.
I think again,
but
I don't know if this is right.
But I'm, okay, so go ahead.
If you were going to go out to market and purchase the advertisements in those different domains, that's the value you would have to come out of pocket for what we're receiving. Does that make sense? And how they're measuring that amount of money is based off of these formulas that's common in the industry. So the $340,000 on NBC would be what an entity would have to pay for what we have received, in essence, for free. Does that make sense?
But there's still, and there's still opportunity for us to, again, measure the return on investment through other ways, just like the other gentleman asked. So, which is also what we're trying to do. But just like, again, back to the Summer Olympics game ad, we measured that and we received much more than we even expected, even with that contribution, because someone saw the ad and they're like, oh, I want to donate now to the university. So sometimes you just, and those are normally surprises in terms of if someone's going to pick up the phone to make a donation because they saw an ad. But that's part of the brand awareness effort, and that's why we have to be consistent in the market, to be out there and remind people that we're here, we exist, and that they should be a part of it. So does that help? Okay. Judy has a comment.
Hi, a comment and a question. And Vice President for University Advancement. Jeff, we've had a lot of discussions related to the community engagement that we have, especially related to our donors who support athletics. And I didn't memorize the data because I wasn't going to be on stage today, but so you might have this. But I think it was out of the last 10 years of all of our donors to athletics, only 6 of those donors only support athletics. Every other donor supports academic programs in areas across this university, which I think is a telling point that our philanthropic support is supporting the entire university and athletics. So I just wanted to make that point. But also related to Beyond Sparta, and you may have this number or it may be our Beyond Sparta team, but I recall that our GPAs for our students, student athletes, is recognizable, and then as well community service hours. And I just wanted to ask about that because that's one of those data points that I think is valuable for us to look at because it is something that's tracked, and it's something that we also talk about when we're meeting with donors. And so that's also valuable for me to have as well. Thanks.
I appreciate that, Judy. I'll give a couple comments. I would say that, there's obviously debate about the value of intercollegiate athletics to some form or fashion, but a lot of my peers in athletic administration that serve in these roles sometimes make the analogy that athletics might be the front porch to a university. And by that, they're meaning that there's an entry point, and it's a visible entry point to people that may not be familiar with the house, or in this case, the university. And so in terms of what Judy was saying, we do have some data that suggests that we had over 1,000 donors over the past 10 years that were introduced to the campus community through athletics, provided a donation initially to athletics, and then broadened their relationship and interest levels with the university and supported other entities and other academic programs through that introduction. And I think that is compelling data in terms of that support structure, that athletics can be that visible, front-facing asset that the university can draw upon for these kind of situations, but more particularly in terms of strengthening in relationships with those that would want to have a relationship with the university. So I appreciate that question. I believe that the 1,023 donors, too, the money that went to academics outside of intercollegiate athletics for this subsection of donors is over 25 million in that deck that we saw earlier. So it is quite a significant amount of money that's been brought into the campus through philanthropy initially from an athletics relationship.
Any other questions? If not, I also just want to add, please. So there's another question for the marketing questions about revenue. 1, thanks for asking about marketing because I thought I wasn't going to get any questions. But 2, I just also want to emphasize that all of these marketing efforts, they yield revenue through our enrollment, and that's in essence that's our key audience. And so and we're actually measuring that as well. So we have our own marketing campaigns that are yielding enrollment for our grad programs, online programs, undergrad as well. So I just want folks to keep in mind that that's why we have a marketing strategy. That's why we have ads in the market. It comes back so that it can drive enrollment. So yes, sir.
I was actually going to ask you a question about that.
All right.
So I'm actually. Like the Spartan Edge campaign that you just showed us, are there any like non-athletic related like campaigns going on given the fact that like a huge, like not to discount athletics, of course, but like our population's like a huge commuter population. Is there any campaigns like trying to target that audience, especially because like I guess trying to target like the local market? I know you guys have that campaign at the San Jose airport that I guess focuses more on our like engineering rankings and such. But I was just curious if there was similar campaigns with more intended like ROIs towards like local engagement as opposed to athletics.
So, a few answers
Yeah.
to your question.
Yeah.
All of our campaigns actually focus on, as I said earlier, the full university experience.
Of course, yeah.
So we leverage, so you may, maybe see the football player that you saw in the ad, right? But that's just because part of the full university experience is showing all aspects of the university, including athletics, right? But you also may remember that there's all kinds of other students doing other things that are academic focused. So we don't have any ads out there that are just promoting athletics. It's always holistically a university experience. So that's number one. Number two, to the ad that you saw at the airport, that was actually promoting us as the number 4 public university, period. In general, right? So it's not highlighting any particular academic program, because everything that we do as university marketing, we're actually marketing the whole university, the university as a whole, and we're trying to attract. And again, our dollars are limited, so most of our dollars for brand awareness. There's 2 types of campaigns. There's brand awareness, so you may see our ads on buses or on billboards, right, or at the airport. That's brand awareness. And then we have another side of our marketing strategy, which is targeted digital ads that most of you may not see, because we're very targeted to very specific regions, statewide, and sometimes to other states. But where we can leverage the national audience where we can't is really with athletics through those national conferences that we wouldn't have access to unless athletics existed. So it complements the markets that we're trying to have our name be established in, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do that. So we do focus a lot locally, statewide, and some nationally, and then we leverage whatever's happening on the athletic side. So does that help?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay, thanks for the question. All right, another question?
I have a question regarding to the donor chart that you presented. There's a sponsorship and philanthropic of about 1-point-something million. And I know Judy's team raised about 20+ million last year. So is this a part of that 20+ million and that transfer to athletic, or this is separated?
Hi, Hugh Young. So it's a piece, right? Because when a donor contributes money to the university, it's not always cash up front, right? They might make a pledge that they're going to give us $100,000 a year for 5 years. And so what's in the donut chart is only the piece that they're getting this year, not the full amount.
Yeah, let me break out last year, because we just looked at this in preparation. We, as an athletic department, had a budgetary goal to raise $4.4 million last fiscal year. Credit to our team, a lot of them are represented here. They're able to generate around $5 million, so over goal. However, that number isn't necessarily all cash in hand and not restricted that we can do anything we want with. In fact, our projection was in the slide, only about $800,000 of what we raised is disposable discretionary income that we can use for whatever purpose the donor would have as their intent, whether that's discretionary to the AD or programmatic to the different sports and restricted in those kind of ways. Of our $5 million, about half was cash, but and half was estate planning, which means it's going to come in a future time after a life event. With respect to the cash, some of those dollars, again, 800,000 may be unrestricted. The other 1.7 remaining may be tied to endowments or to future items. I know we had a gift that was predicated on a December 26th distribution that was counted in those dollars. And that's a significant amount of that was raised last year. So maybe that helps with the complexity, but there's a difference between what was budgeted, what was realized, and what is discretionary and what is restricted in terms of those different opportunities with philanthropy.
Right, thank you. But all the donation will go through Tower Foundation
Yes.
first and then allocate to you. Right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Everything that we raise from the external side, we work with our friends over in the Tower Foundation.
Okay, so that's not additional to what Tower has raised. So it's a part of their total.
It is a part of their total.
Okay.
I know we were a big part of Giving Day last year. I think almost over half of the contributions were coming in from an intercollegiate athletics campaign.
Thank you.
That's part of the reason why budgeting for athletics is so complex, because you don't necessarily know who's going to come forward with a donation in the next year and how much of it you'll be able to use right away.
Can I just ask, you've been talking about a fee town hall. Who was invited to that town hall? Because I wasn't. And so curious about what parts of the community were invited.
I don't know the answer to who was invited, but it's a CFAC town hall, which is the College Fee Advisory Committee. And Madi, the chair of CFAC, is in the audience, so maybe she can answer that question. I don't know how it was advertised.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So at the beginning of the semester, first class day, a message was sent out campus-wide about the CFAC introducing or proposing an IRA fee increase. So there was a campus-wide email for that and a website that launched that had a lot more specific information. So it has the fee proposal, it has the fee distribution, and it had all the consultative outreach activities that we were also going to have. So that will be our last open forum, which is next Tuesday. We had one last Tuesday in this same space where we had about 100 students in attendance, or 100 people in attendance, and about 40 online, in person versus online. So next Tuesday at noon will be our final open forum that's open to all, and it'll be in this room. But there are also surveys, and as of this morning, that was sent to all students. As of this morning, we have nearly 8,000 students reply to the survey, and that's only students. We are also conducting focus groups with very targeted groups, and that is also started last week and will go through next week. So that's kind of our general outreach approach. We send the website once. The students get 2 to 3 times a week reminders about the survey, and then we've got things up on monitors and the like.
I think there's one more question.
Thank you. Thank you for answering all of our wonderful questions. If I may, if coaches are considered academically related, shouldn't they be funded by the general fund and tuition? For example, in 2024, the head coach was hired. That was about a little bit less than $6 million. Maybe I think the value was about 5.76 million increase in coaching salary, benefits, and bonuses paid by the university in the reporting year 2024. And the 5.76 million seems pretty close to the $5 million the intercollegiate athletics is asking for from the IRA fee revenue. Is there any of the IRA fee revenue being used to free funds that will be used to support athletics coaches' salaries. Doing so would probably double dip into different funds and may cause some type of red flags. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to try to unpack that question. I appreciate you asking it, and in the frame of me being able to provide some clarity on what you asked. And so how I'm going to answer this is with respect to what you just mentioned, a $5 million increase in coaching salary. That's not true. Our public records or our coaching salaries, I believe, are online publicly. I think you would be surprised to see the salary of our current football situation versus the previous head coach when you do that due diligence. What that category I believe you're referencing was incentive and other dollars that went into auxiliary compensation. In that particular year, which was an anomaly year because we had a massive transition in our coaching in our primary revenue sport of football. In that situation, the prior staff hit a lot of incentives for winning the Mountain West or coming in first place in the regular season and making a bowl game. So there's quite a bit of incentive payment on that particular coaching staff, as well as a longevity payment, significant longevity payment that was paid to our prior head coach after that particular season. And then when you factor in that we had to replace almost an entire coaching staff of about a dozen positions and factor in all the vacation pay and all the other pay in terms of transition costs, it is not a salary increase per se. It is a reflection of all those different buckets coming together in a fiscal year that forced a one-year anomaly in that situation with our salaries. If you take a look on the database at our coaching salaries consistently from year to year, I think you would find a different annual average than the particular year when we had the massive change in our football program. Does that help satisfy that part of the question at least? Okay, thank you.
Okay, last call for questions. If not, we really thank you. Is there, no, okay. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you to all those that asked us questions, and we will compile answers to the questions that came to Padlet and put those on our CFAC webpage. Thank you, everybody. Have a good Thursday. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, I was like, oh, let's go.
I play the game with all.